I walked down the basement stairs of my childhood home, expecting to find it empty. Instead, I heard my mother's voice screaming something that made my blood freeze. I pushed open the gym door and saw my 15-year-old sister Katie hanging from the gymnastics rings, blood dripping from her torn palms onto the mat below. Her face was twisted in agony, tears streaming down her cheeks. My mother Helen stood beneath her, arms crossed, screaming up at her. "Olympic champions don't cry. Get back up there and do it again." Katie's desperate eyes found mine across the room, pleading silently for help. I didn't know how to give. I didn't think. I just moved. "What the hell are you doing?" I shouted, rushing across the basement gym. My voice echoed off the concrete walls, bouncing back at me with all the shock and horror I felt. Helen whipped around, her face transforming from fury to cold calculation in an instant. That look. I remembered that look from childhood. It was the look that said she was already 3 steps ahead of whatever I was about to do. "Gordon," she said flatly, "what are you doing here?" I ignored her and reached up to help Katie down from the rings. Her arms were shaking so badly she could barely hold on. When I got her feet on the ground, I saw her hands properly for the first time. The skin on both palms was torn open, raw flesh visible beneath the blood. She'd been gripping those rings for so long that her hands had literally ripped apart. "Katie? Oh my God," I whispered, trying to examine her hands. She pulled away from me, her eyes darting between me and our mother. "I'm fine," Katie said quietly, but her voice trembled and fresh tears rolled down her face. "She's not fine." I turned on Helen, fury rising in my chest like a wave. "What is wrong with you? Look at her hands. She needs a doctor." Helen's expression didn't change. She stood there in her pristine workout clothes, her hair pulled back in a tight bun, looking like the picture of a devoted mother. Except devoted mothers don't torture their children. "Katie is training," Helen said calmly. "This is what elite athletes do. They push through pain. They don't give up when things get hard. This isn't training. This is abuse." I grabbed Katie's wrist, gently, holding up her bleeding hand. "Look at this. She's bleeding." "Blisters are normal in gymnastics," Helen said, her voice maddeningly level. "You wouldn't understand, Gordon. You were never an athlete. You don't know what it takes to be great." That stung, but I pushed it aside. "I know the difference between training and torture. Katie, come on. Let's get you cleaned up." Katie looked at our mother, waiting for permission. That broke my heart more than anything else. She was asking permission to get her wounds treated. Helen gave a slight nod. 5 minutes. Then back to training. I guided Katie upstairs to the bathroom, my hand on her shoulder. She was so thin. When had she gotten so thin? I'd been living in Seattle for the past 3 years, working in software development. I came back to Denver maybe twice a year. Had it really been that long since I'd seen her? Since I'd really looked at her? In the bathroom, I ran warm water over her hands. Katie winced but didn't cry out. She'd learned not to show pain. That realization made me feel sick. "How long has this been going on?" I asked quietly, dabbing at her wounds with a clean towel. Katie stared at the sink. "It's not that bad." "Katie, it's fine, Gordon. Really. Mom just wants me to be the best I can be." I grabbed the first aid kit from under the sink and started applying antibiotic ointment to her torn palms. She had calluses on top of calluses, layers of damaged skin that told the story of months, maybe years, of this kind of treatment. "Tell me the truth," I said. "Please." Katie's composure cracked. Her bottom lip trembled, and she looked up at me with eyes that held so much pain I wanted to punch a wall. "Every day," she whispered. "She makes me train 6 hours after school and 4 hours before. Sometimes more if I mess up a routine. I haven't had a day off in 8 months." 8 months? I felt dizzy. "What about school? Friends?" "She pulled me out of school 2 years ago. I'm homeschooled now. Mom teaches me between training sessions." Katie's voice was barely audible. "I don't have friends anymore. I'm not allowed to see anyone. She says they'll distract me from my goals." "Your goals? Or her goals?" Katie looked away. That was answer enough. I finished bandaging her hands, wrapping them carefully in gauze. What else? I asked. What other injuries are you hiding? She hesitated, then slowly lifted her shirt. Her rib cage was a canvas of bruises, purple and yellow and green in various stages of healing. I fell on the beam last week, and my ankle. She pulled up her pant leg to show a swollen ankle wrapped in an elastic bandage. I sprained it 3 days ago, but Mom says I need to work through it or I'll lose my edge. I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab Katie and run out of this house and never come back. I'm going to help you, I said. I promise. Tomorrow, I'm taking you to see a doctor. Hope flickered in Katie's eyes for just a moment before fear replaced it. Mom won't let you. She doesn't have a choice. I'm your brother. I'm not going to let this continue. We heard footsteps on the stairs. Helen appeared in the bathroom doorway, her arms crossed. Time's up, she said. Back to the gym, Katie. She needs rest, I said, stepping between them. Her hands are torn open. Her ribs are bruised. Her ankle is sprained. She needs to see a doctor, not go back to training. Helen's eyes went cold. Katie, go to your room. Katie looked at me apologetically and slipped past both of us. I heard her bedroom door close down the hall. Helen stepped into the bathroom and closed the door behind her. We stood in the small space, face to face. Let me make something very clear to you, Gordon, she said, her voice low and dangerous. I have full custody of Katie. Do you remember the divorce? Your father tried to fight me for custody. He lost. Badly. I have legal authority over every aspect of Katie's life. Her education, her medical care, her training, everything. That doesn't give you the right to abuse her. I'm not abusing her. I'm preparing her for greatness. But you wouldn't understand that, would you? You left us. You went off to college, then moved to Seattle. You visit twice a year and think you can come back and tell me how to raise my daughter? Our sister, I corrected. My daughter, Helen said firmly. And if you try to interfere with her training, if you try to undermine me in any way, I will make sure you never see her again. I have that power, Gordon. Legally, you have no rights here. None. She opened the bathroom door and walked out, leaving me standing there with the weight of her threat pressing down on me. That night, I called our father from my childhood bedroom. Marcus picked up on the third ring. Gordon, everything okay? Dad, it's Katie. Mom is hurting her. Badly. There was a long silence. Then my father sighed, a sound so full of defeat and exhaustion that it made me want to scream. I know, he said quietly. You know? How can you know and not do anything? I tried, Gordon. During the divorce, I fought for custody. I told the judge about Helen's behavior, her obsession with gymnastics. She had a lawyer who destroyed me on the stand, made me look like an absent father, a workaholic who didn't care about his kids. The judge gave her full custody. I couldn't afford to keep fighting. The legal fees bankrupted me. So you just gave up? I couldn't keep the accusation out of my voice. I didn't give up. I lost. There's a difference. Marcus's voice cracked. I moved to Arizona because I couldn't stand being in the same city and not being able to protect her. It was killing me, Gordon. Maybe that makes me a coward, but I couldn't watch it anymore. I closed my eyes, pressing my palm against my forehead. I have to do something. Be careful, my father warned. Helen is smart. She's always 3 steps ahead. If she thinks you're a threat to her control over Katie, she'll crush you. We hung up shortly after. I lay in my old bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of training coming from the basement. Even at 10 o'clock at night, Helen had Katie down there. I could hear my mother's voice shouting instructions, could hear the impact of Katie's feet hitting the mat over and over. Katie was being punished. For talking to me, for showing weakness, for bleeding. My intervention hadn't helped. It had made things worse. And I had no idea what to do next. I stayed at the house for 3 more days. Helen made it clear I wasn't welcome, but she couldn't legally kick me out without notice. I used that time wisely. I started documenting everything with my phone. I set it to record video and left it on the basement stairs during training sessions, propped against the railing where Helen wouldn't notice. I captured hours of footage. Helen screaming at Katie, calling her worthless, pathetic, weak, forcing her to repeat routines 30, 40 times until Katie's legs gave out, making her hang from the rings until her bandaged hands started bleeding through the gauze. I photographed Katie's injuries every morning. The bruises that appeared overnight. The swelling in her ankle that got worse, not better. The weight loss that was becoming more apparent each day. Katie cooperated reluctantly. She was terrified of what Helen would do if she found out, but I could see she was also desperate. She wanted help. She just didn't believe help was possible. On the third day, I made the call to Child Protective Services. I did it anonymously, from a payphone outside a gas station, giving them the address and a detailed description of what was happening. They said someone would investigate within 72 hours. 2 days later, a woman named Laura Thompson arrived at the house. She was in her mid-40s, carrying a clipboard and wearing an expression of professional concern that I'd later learn was completely useless. Helen was ready for her. I watched from the kitchen as Helen transformed before my eyes. The cold, calculating woman who screamed at her daughter became warm and maternal. She hugged Katie, asked her how she was feeling, offered to make her lunch. The house, which had been cluttered with training equipment and protein shake containers, was spotless. Katie was dressed in nice clothes instead of her usual torn leotard. Her hands were bandaged, but Helen explained that away easily. Katie is a competitive gymnast, Helen told Laura, smiling warmly. She trains hard. Sometimes she gets blisters. It's part of the sport. Laura Thompson examined Katie's hands and nodded sympathetically. That must hurt. It's not so bad, Katie said quietly. She'd been coached. I could tell. Can I see your training schedule? Laura asked. Helen produced a printed schedule that showed reasonable training hours, adequate rest days, and a balanced homeschool curriculum. It was complete fiction. I'd never seen that schedule before in my life. Very impressive, Laura said, making notes on her clipboard. And Katie, do you enjoy gymnastics? Katie glanced at Helen. Yes, ma'am. I love it. Does your mother ever hurt you? No, ma'am. Never. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab Laura Thompson and show her the videos on my phone. But I held back, watching the performance play out. Then Helen went in for the kill. I'm glad you came, actually, Helen said, her voice taking on a pained quality. I've been worried about my son, Gordon. She gestured to me in the kitchen doorway. He's been acting strangely since he came back to visit, following us around, filming us without permission. I'm concerned about his mental state. Laura looked at me with new interest. Is that true? I was documenting abuse, I said. He's always had problems, Helen continued smoothly. Drug issues in high school. He's been clean for years, as far as I know, but lately his behavior has been concerning. Paranoid. Accusatory. He's convinced that I'm hurting Katie when I'm just trying to help her achieve her dreams. That's not true, I said. But my voice sounded weak, even to my own ears. Helen produced papers from a folder. Medical records, or what looked like medical records. A prescription for painkillers from when I had my wisdom teeth out at 19. A counselor's note from my college health center. After I went through a bad breakup, she'd twisted everything, taken fragments of my past, and constructed a narrative of instability. Then she showed Laura text messages I'd sent Katie. Don't tell your mother about our talks. Keep this between us. I'll help you, but you have to trust me. Out of context, they looked sinister, like I was trying to manipulate her, turn her against her mother. Laura's expression changed. She looked at me not with concern, but with suspicion. Mr. Gordon, I think it might be best if you gave your mother and sister some space, Laura said carefully. You're not going to investigate? I asked, disbelieving. I've seen no evidence of abuse, Laura said. What I have seen is a dedicated mother training her talented daughter, and a concerned sibling who may be projecting his own issues onto a healthy family dynamic. She left shortly after, promising to close the case as unfounded. I stood in the kitchen, numb with shock, as Helen saw her to the door. When Helen came back, she smiled at me. It was the coldest smile I'd ever seen. I told you, she said simply. I'm always 3 steps ahead. 4 days later, I received a court summons. Helen had filed for a restraining order against me. The petition claimed I was unstable, that I'd been harassing her and Katie, that I'd invaded their privacy by filming them without consent, that I'd attempted to alienate Katie from her loving mother with lies about abuse. Every piece of evidence I'd gathered against her, she'd turned into evidence against me. The court hearing was scheduled for the following week. I hired a public defender named Thomas Wright who looked at my case and shook his head. "This doesn't look good," he said bluntly. "You filmed a minor without the guardian's permission. You inserted yourself into their home and daily life. She has documentation of concerning behavior. Your evidence is inadmissible because it was obtained without consent. Even if we could admit it, the child testified that there's no abuse, because she's terrified of her mother." "I believe you," Thomas said. "But belief isn't enough in court. We need proof. And right now, the proof makes you look like the problem, not the mother." The hearing was a nightmare. Helen took the stand and cried. Actual tears. She talked about how hard it had been raising 2 kids alone after the divorce. How much she sacrificed to give Katie opportunities. How heartbroken she was that her son had turned against her. Then Katie testified. She had to. The judge insisted on hearing from her. Katie walked to the stand in a pretty dress, her hands still bandaged. She wouldn't look at me. "Katie, do you feel safe at home?" the judge asked. "Yes, Your Honor." "Has your mother ever hurt you?" "No, Your Honor." "What about your brother Gordon? How do you feel about him?" Katie's voice was barely audible. "He scares me sometimes. He's been acting strange, following us around. Mom says he might be sick." I wanted to die. Helen had gotten to her, had convinced her that I was the threat. Or maybe Katie was just too afraid to tell the truth. Either way, the result was the same. The judge granted the restraining order. I was required to stay at least 500 feet away from Helen and Katie at all times. No contact, no communication, nothing. I walked out of that courthouse feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. I'd tried to save my sister, and instead I'd lost her completely. Now I was legally barred from even trying to help. I drove back to Seattle the next day, leaving Katie behind in that house of horrors. I'd failed her, and I didn't know how to fix it. The weeks after the restraining order were the darkest of my life. I went back to my apartment in Seattle and tried to return to normal. I went to work, sat at my desk, wrote code, attended meetings. But nothing felt real. I kept thinking about Katie, alone in that house with Helen, being tortured every single day while I sat 5 states away, powerless to help. I couldn't eat. Food tasted like cardboard. I lost 15 pounds in 3 weeks. My boss pulled me aside and asked if everything was okay. I lied and said I was fine. How could I explain that my little sister was being systematically destroyed, and I couldn't do anything about it? I stopped sleeping well. When I did sleep, I had nightmares. Katie hanging from those rings, blood dripping from her hands. Katie looking at me from the witness stand, saying I scared her. Katie's bruised ribs, her swollen ankle, her terrified eyes. I started researching Helen's past. I needed to understand her, to figure out what drove this obsession. I spent hours online, digging through old newspaper archives and social media. That's when I found the articles from 1998. Helen Martinez, 17 years old, elite gymnast on track for the Olympic trials. There were photos of her competing. She'd been beautiful, graceful, talented. The articles painted her as a rising star, a girl with Olympic dreams within reach. Then I found the article from 2 weeks before the trials. Local gymnast's Olympic dreams, shattered by injury. Helen had torn her ACL during practice. Catastrophic damage. Her career ended instantly, 2 weeks before the biggest competition of her life. I kept digging. Found her wedding announcement to our father just a year later. She'd married Marcus when she was only 18, barely out of high school. I was born a year after that. The pieces fell into place like a horrible puzzle. Helen's gymnastics career had been stolen from her by injury. She'd never gotten her chance at glory, so she'd decided to get it through Katie instead. This wasn't about Katie at all. It was about Helen's unfulfilled dreams, her lost potential, her stolen future. Katie was just the vessel through which Helen was trying to achieve the success that had been ripped away from her. I contacted some of Helen's old coaches. Most didn't want to talk, but one woman, Ruth Brennan, agreed to meet me for coffee when I flew back to Denver under the pretense of a work trip. Ruth was in her 70s now, retired from coaching. She remembered Helen well. Talented girl, Ruth said, stirring her coffee slowly. But troubled. Her parents were incredibly controlling. They'd started her in gymnastics when she was 4 years old. By the time she got to me at 14, she was already showing signs of obsessive behavior. Everything was about gymnastics. She had no friends, no life outside the gym. What happened after her injury? I asked. Ruth's face fell. She was devastated, completely destroyed. I tried to help her see that life wasn't over, that there were other paths. But her parents had invested everything in her career, financially and emotionally. When that ended, they were angry, blamed her for the injury, said she hadn't trained hard enough, hadn't been careful enough. They blamed her? Oh yes. I heard her mother screaming at her in the hospital. All that money wasted, all those years for nothing. It was horrible. Ruth shook her head sadly. Helen never recovered from that. She disappeared after the wedding. I always worried about her. She's doing the same thing to her daughter now, I said quietly. To my sister. Ruth closed her eyes. I was afraid of that. Trauma like that doesn't just disappear. It gets passed down. I left that meeting understanding Helen for the first time. Not forgiving her, never forgiving her, but understanding her. She was repeating the cycle of abuse that had been done to her. Katie was paying the price for Helen's parents' cruelty, for Helen's destroyed dreams, for generations of obsession and control. But understanding didn't help me save Katie. 2 weeks after I got back to Seattle, I received a call from a blocked number. I almost didn't answer. Gordon? The voice was shaky, professional. Yes? This is Dr. Amy Jacobson. I'm a pediatrician at Denver Children's Hospital. I treated your sister Katie 2 days ago. My heart stopped. Is she okay? She came in through the emergency room with a stress fracture in her left foot, quite severe. She should be in a walking boot for 8 weeks minimum. No weight bearing. She's hurt? Mr. Gordon, I'm calling because I'm concerned. Your mother checked Katie out of the hospital after only 2 hours, against medical advice. I recommended immediate treatment and immobilization. Your mother refused and took her home. Can't you do something? Call CPS? I did, Dr. Jacobson said quietly. They said they'd already investigated the family and found nothing. But I wanted you to know. I found your contact information in Katie's emergency records from a few years ago. Thank you for calling, I managed to say. After we hung up, I immediately called CPS again. Same investigator, Laura Thompson. Mr. Gordon, we've already investigated your claims and found them to be unfounded. If you continue to call with false reports, we'll have to consider harassment charges against you. Her foot is broken. A doctor called me. Parents have the right to make medical decisions for their children. Unless there's clear evidence of abuse, we can't intervene. And we've already determined there's no abuse occurring. She hung up. I sat in my apartment, staring at my phone, feeling more helpless than I'd ever felt in my life. The system that was supposed to protect children had failed Katie completely. Everyone who had the power to help her had looked the other way. 3 days later, a package arrived at my apartment. No return address. Just a manila envelope with my name on it. Inside was a USB drive. I plugged it into my laptop with shaking hands. The drive contained video files, dozens of them, all recorded from Katie's phone. I clicked on the first one. It was dated 2 weeks ago. The footage was shaky, filmed from a phone propped up somewhere in the basement gym. I could see Katie on the vault runway. She was limping. Her left foot was clearly injured even then, before the stress fracture had fully developed. Helen's voice came through the speakers. Again, Katie ran toward the vault, her face contorted in pain. She launched herself over the apparatus and landed badly, crying out. She crumpled to the mat, holding her foot. Helen stormed over to her. Get up. That landing was pathetic. Mom, my foot really hurts, Katie sobbed. Helen grabbed her arm and yanked her to standing. Pain is weakness leaving the body. Olympic champions don't quit because something hurts. Now, do it again. The video continued for another 10 minutes. Katie attempting the vault over and over on her injured foot, crying harder with each attempt. I watched the next video. This one showed Helen forcing Katie to do a floor routine. Katie kept stumbling, her injured foot unable to support her weight properly. Every time she fell, Helen screamed at her, "You're worthless. Pathetic. You'll never make nationals like this." The third video was even worse. Katie was on the balance beam. She tried to do a dismount, landed on her injured foot, and screamed. She fell to the mat and didn't get up. Helen walked over and slapped her across the face. "That's for quitting," Helen said coldly. There were more videos. So many more. Weeks of footage showing systematic torture. Helen withholding food until Katie completed routines perfectly. Helen forcing her to train through the night. Helen's constant verbal abuse. "You're weak. You're a failure. Your father left because you weren't good enough." The final video was different. It was just Katie's face, close to the camera. She looked exhausted, hollow. Her eyes had dark circles underneath them. She was so thin her cheekbones jutted out sharply. "Please help me, Gordon," she whispered to the camera. "I don't know what else to do. She's going to kill me. I know she is. The Nationals competition is in 3 weeks, in Colorado Springs. She's making me compete on my broken foot. She says if I don't place in the top 10, she'll increase training to 12 hours a day. I can't do this anymore. I just can't. Please. You're the only one who can save me." The video ended. I stared at my laptop screen, tears streaming down my face. Katie had risked everything to send me this. If Helen found out, there was no telling what she'd do. Also in the envelope was a handwritten note in Katie's handwriting. "Nationals, Colorado Springs. 3 weeks. Please come." I looked at the calendar. 3 weeks from now. I was legally barred from contacting Katie or being near her. If I went to the competition, I'd be arrested for violating the restraining order. But if I didn't go, Katie might die, or be permanently crippled, or lose the last shred of hope she had left. I didn't even hesitate. I bought a plane ticket to Colorado Springs, booked a hotel room, and started planning. I was going to save my sister, even if it destroyed me in the process. The drive from Seattle to Colorado Springs took 14 hours. I could have flown, but I was afraid airport security would somehow flag me, would somehow know I was violating a restraining order. So I drove straight through, stopping only for gas and terrible coffee. I arrived the morning of the competition. The event was being held at a massive indoor arena downtown, one of those places that usually hosts hockey games and concerts. Today it was filled with gymnasts, their families, and coaches from across the country. I bought a ticket at the door and entered with a crowd of spectators. I wore a baseball cap pulled low and sunglasses, trying to blend in. My heart was hammering so hard, I thought it might burst through my chest. Every security guard I passed, I expected to be recognized, stopped, arrested. But no one looked at me twice. I found a seat in the upper level, with a good view of the competition floor. I scanned the crowd below, looking for Helen and Katie. It took me 20 minutes to spot them in the warm-up area. Katie was sitting on a bench, her foot wrapped in some kind of brace. She looked even thinner than in the videos. Her competition leotard hung off her frame. Helen stood over her, talking intently, gesturing sharply. Even from this distance, I could see Katie was terrified. The competition began. I watched as team after team performed. The gymnasts were incredible, flying through the air with impossible grace. But all I could see was Katie, waiting her turn, limping slightly every time she moved. Finally, Katie's team was called for the uneven bars rotation. I watched Helen push Katie toward the chalk bowl. Katie's hands were wrapped in tape and bandages. She chalked up mechanically. Her movements practiced, but joyless. This was my moment. I had to do this publicly, where Helen couldn't hurt Katie, where witnesses would see everything. I stood up and made my way down the arena stairs. My legs felt like water. Security hadn't noticed me yet. I kept my head down, walking quickly toward the competition floor. I reached the barrier separating the audience from the athletes. I climbed over it. Now people were noticing. A few spectators pointed. A judge looked up, confused. I walked across the competition floor toward Katie. She was standing by the uneven bars, waiting for her turn. Helen was beside her, giving last-minute instructions. "Katie," I called out. She turned. Her eyes went wide with shock. "Gordon?" she whispered. Helen spun around. Her face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Surprise, fury, and then cold calculation. "Katie, you don't have to do this," I said, reaching her. I was vaguely aware of people shouting, of movement at the edges of my vision, but I focused only on my sister. "Your foot is broken. You'll permanently damage it if you compete. Come with me, right now. I'll take you somewhere safe." "Security!" Helen screamed. "That's him! The stalker! Someone call security!" People were running now. Officials in suits, security guards in yellow jackets. But I had a few more seconds. "Katie, please, look at me. You sent me those videos. You asked for help. I'm here. Let me help you." Katie's face crumpled. For a moment, I thought she was going to take my hand. I saw the war happening inside her, hope battling against years of psychological control. Then Helen grabbed Katie's shoulder. Hard. I saw Katie wince. "Don't listen to him, sweetie," Helen said, her voice suddenly maternal, concerned. "He's sick. We talked about this. He's here to hurt you." "I'm not here to hurt you," I said desperately. "Katie, you know me. I'm your brother. I love you. I would never hurt you." Security guards reached us. Two large men in yellow jackets grabbed my arms. "This man has a restraining order," Helen announced loudly, producing a folded paper from her pocket. How did she have that ready? She'd known I might come. "He's not allowed within 500 feet of my daughter or me. I want him arrested immediately." The crowd had gone silent. Everyone was watching. Hundreds of phones were out, recording. This was going to be all over social media within minutes. The security guards were pulling me away, but I fought to stay, to say one more thing. "Katie, you're going to permanently damage your foot. You could lose the ability to walk normally. Is that what you want?" And then Katie spoke. Her voice was loud enough for everyone around us to hear. "Leave us alone," she cried. "Why won't you just leave us alone? I don't want your help. I never wanted your help." The words hit me like physical blows. The security guards used my moment of shock to drag me away. I didn't resist. I couldn't. Katie's words had taken all the fight out of me. Police arrived within minutes. I was arrested, handcuffed, and taken to the local station. Violating a restraining order. Trespassing. Disrupting a public event. I spent that night in a holding cell. I didn't care. All I could think about was Katie's face when she'd told me to leave her alone. Helen had won. She'd completely turned Katie against me. I was released the next morning with a court date and a warning that I'd likely face jail time. My lawyer from Denver called me, furious. "What were you thinking?" Thomas demanded. "You just guaranteed you're going to prison. And you gave the mother ammunition for a dozen more legal actions against you." "I had to try," I said numbly. "Well, you failed. Spectacularly." I checked the gymnastics competition results online from my hotel room. Katie had competed. On her broken foot. She'd finished 14th. Not good enough for nationals. Not by a long shot. According to a follow-up article, Katie Martinez had collapsed after her floor routine and been taken to the hospital. The article didn't give details, just said she'd suffered an injury during competition. I called the hospital, gave them Katie's name. They wouldn't tell me anything. I wasn't family, not according to the restraining order. I called Marcus in Arizona. Told him everything that had happened. "I'll go," my father said immediately. "I'll drive to Denver right now. I'm still her father. Helen can't keep me away from her if she's in the hospital." For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of hope. Marcus would go. He'd see how bad things were. He'd finally step up and fight for custody. But the next day, Marcus called me back. His voice was defeated. "I went to the hospital," he said. Helen had already checked her out. Against medical advice again. I went to their house. Helen called the police and had me removed for trespassing. "Gordon," She's got this completely locked down. She's thought of everything. There has to be something we can do, I said. But even I could hear how hopeless I sounded. If there is, I don't know what it is, Marcus said quietly. That afternoon, I received an email from the Denver Police Department. Katie had filed a statement, a sworn statement. In it, she claimed that I had given her the USB drive, that I had coached her on what to record and what to say, that I had threatened to hurt Helen if Katie didn't cooperate with me. She said the whole thing had been my manipulation, my obsession with destroying her mother. It was all lies. Helen had obviously forced her to say these things, but it didn't matter. Katie had put her signature on the document. She was backing her mother's version of events completely. I was now facing not just restraining order violations, but potentially conspiracy charges, coercion of a minor. My lawyer said I might be looking at actual prison time. Everything I'd done to help Katie had been turned against me. Every attempt to save her had only given Helen more ammunition, more control, more ways to punish Katie and keep her isolated. I'd failed, completely and utterly failed, and Katie was still trapped with a monster. I flew back to Seattle in a daze. I felt like a shell of a person, hollowed out. My employer had put me on indefinite leave after the arrest made the news. Pending resolution of your legal issues, the HR email said, which was corporate speak for "you're probably going to be fired." I didn't care about my job. I didn't care about anything except Katie, and Katie was lost to me. My lawyer Thomas called to discuss the plea deal the prosecutor was offering. 12 months probation, mandatory psychiatric evaluation, permanent restraining order. If I didn't take it, I'd likely face actual jail time. Take the deal, Thomas advised. You're not going to win at trial. The sister's testimony will destroy you. That testimony is lies, I said. Doesn't matter. It's her word against yours, and she's the victim in this scenario. You're the adult who violated a court order. Take the deal, Gordon. I told him I'd think about it. But really, what choice did I have? I spent my days in my apartment, drinking too much, sleeping too little. I'd given up. What else could I do? The legal system had failed Katie. My father had failed Katie. I had failed Katie. Helen hat gewonnen. I was going through bills one night, drunk on cheap whiskey, when I noticed a charge on my credit card I didn't recognize. Investigation services. $250. Dated from a month ago. Then I remembered. In a moment of desperation, before everything went sideways, I'd hired a private investigator to look into Helen's finances and background. His name was Dale Kemper. I'd forgotten all about him after the restraining order hearing. I found his number in my contacts and called. It rang 4 times before he picked up. Kemper Investigations. Mr. Kemper, this is Gordon Martinez. I hired you about a month ago to investigate my mother, Helen Martinez. I apologize for not following up. Things got complicated. Gordon, I was hoping you'd call. I found something. Something big. I sat up straighter, my drunken fog clearing slightly. What did you find? Can you meet me tomorrow? I don't want to discuss this over the phone. We arranged to meet at a diner near downtown Seattle the next morning. I arrived hungover and exhausted, but alert enough to listen. Dale Kemper was a heavy-set man in his 50s with kind eyes and calloused hands. He slid a manila folder across the table to me. I've been investigating your mother's finances like you asked, he said. Something didn't sit right, so I dug deeper than usual. I opened the folder. Inside were financial statements, insurance documents, bank records. Your mother has taken out 3 separate life insurance policies on Katie over the past 18 months, Dale said quietly. Total death benefit is $2 million. All of them list Helen as the sole beneficiary. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. $2 million? Katie is worth more dead than alive to your mother, Dale said bluntly. I'm not saying she's planning to kill her, but she's certainly prepared to profit if something happens. I flipped through the documents with shaking hands. Policy 1, $700,000. Policy 2, $600,000. Policy 3, $700,000. All taken out within the past year and a half. All while Helen was systematically destroying Katie's body through overtraining and neglect. There's more, Dale said. He pulled out another set of documents. These are medical records. Took some doing to get these, and I won't say exactly how I got them, but they're legitimate. The medical records showed Katie's hospital visits over the past 2 years. 4 separate emergency room visits. 1 for severe dehydration. The notes indicated her kidneys were beginning to show signs of damage. 1 for cardiac arrhythmia related to electrolyte imbalance. The doctor's notes mentioned concerns about malnutrition and an eating disorder. 1 for a concussion. Helen had claimed it was a training accident, but the ER doctor had noted that the injury pattern was inconsistent with reported mechanism and had contacted CPS. Nothing had come of it. The most recent visit was the stress fracture in her foot, now a complete fracture. Every single time, Helen had checked Katie out of the hospital against medical advice. Every time, doctors had expressed concern. Every time, nothing had been done. This is a pattern, I said, my voice shaking. She's systematically destroying her. That's what it looks like to me, Dale agreed. Question is it intentional, or is she just so obsessed that she doesn't care if Katie gets hurt? Does it matter? I asked bitterly. For legal purposes, yes. But morally? Dale shrugged. Either way, that girl is in danger. I gathered up all the documents and thanked Dale for his work. Then I drove straight to the Seattle Police Department. I asked to speak to someone about a child in danger. They connected me with a detective named Sarah Morton, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. I laid everything out for her. The life insurance policies, the medical records, the pattern of abuse, the videos Katie had sent me. Detective Morton listened carefully, reviewing the documents. This is concerning, she admitted. But most of this is circumstantial. The life insurance policies aren't illegal. Parents can insure their children. The medical records were obtained illegally, which means they're inadmissible in court. And the videos? You said your sister now claims you coerced her into making them. She only said that because her mother forced her to. I believe you, Detective Morton said. But belief isn't enough. Without Katie's cooperation, without her being willing to testify against her mother, our hands are tied. Washington State can't intervene in a Colorado custody situation. You'd need Colorado authorities to act. Colorado authorities already investigated. They found nothing. Then I don't know what to tell you, Detective Morton said sympathetically. The best thing you could do is get Katie to safety first. Once she's out of her mother's control, she might be willing to tell the truth. But as long as she's in that house, under that woman's psychological control, you're not going to get anywhere. I can't get near her. I have a restraining order. Then you're in a catch-22 situation, the detective said quietly. I left the police station feeling even more hopeless than before. Even with evidence, even with proof of the pattern, no one could help. The system was fundamentally broken. I was walking to my car in the parking lot when someone called my name. Gordon? Gordon Martinez? I turned to see a woman in her early 30s, athletic build, with blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked familiar, but I couldn't place her. Yes? I'm Tracy Sullivan. I used to coach Katie. I saw you on the news. The thing at the competition in Colorado Springs. Recognition hit me. Tracy. Katie had mentioned her years ago, when she first started gymnastics, before Helen took over completely. You coached Katie? For 5 years. From when she was 8, until she was 13. Can we talk? Please? We found a coffee shop nearby. Tracy ordered us both coffees, and we sat in a corner booth. I've been following what happened, Tracy said. I saw the videos of you at the competition. I read about the arrest. I know what you're trying to do. I'm trying to save my sister. I know. And I want to help. Tracy's eyes were intense, determined. I should have done more years ago. I've regretted it every day since. She told me her story. How she'd coached Katie when Katie first started gymnastics. How Katie had been a happy, talented kid who genuinely loved the sport. How Helen had slowly become more and more controlling over the years, demanding private sessions, criticizing Tracy's coaching, starting to train Katie at home between regular sessions. I confronted her about it, Tracy said. Told her she was overtraining Katie, that the girl needed rest and balance. Helen threatened to sue me for slander and pulled Katie from the gym entirely. That was 3 years ago. Did you report it to anyone? I called CPS. Told them what I'd seen. They investigated and found nothing. Helen's very good at hiding what she does. Tracy's jaw clenched. I felt guilty ever since. I should have done more. Should have fought harder. So why are you here now? Tracy pulled out her phone and opened a photo gallery. Because I've been documenting everything from the outside. She showed me photos. Dozens of them. All taken from the street outside Helen's house, through windows, from public property. Time-stamped photos showing Katie over the past 6 months. In each photo, Katie looked worse. Thinner, more bruised, limping, hobbling. I live 2 streets over from your mother, Tracy explained. I walk my dog past her house every morning and evening. I started taking photos a few months ago when I noticed how bad Katie looked. I thought maybe if I documented her deterioration over time, it might help somehow. This is incredible, I breathed, scrolling through the photos. The documentation was thorough. You could literally watch Katie wasting away over the weeks. I couldn't save her before, Tracy said. But maybe together, we can save her now. For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than despair. I felt hope. Tracy and I spent the next week building a case. We combined everything. Dale's investigation showing the insurance policies and financial motive. Tracy's photos documenting Katie's physical deterioration over months. The medical records Dale had obtained showing the pattern of emergency room visits. My videos from before the restraining order. We needed a lawyer who understood family law and was willing to fight. Tracy found her, Amanda Pierce, a family law attorney in her 40s who specialized in abuse cases. She had a reputation for being relentless. Amanda reviewed everything in her office, her expression growing darker with each document. This is attempted murder through systematic neglect, she said finally. Or it will be, if we don't stop it soon. Can you help us? I asked. I can try. But we need a triggering event. Something that forces the system to pay attention. Amanda tapped her fingers on her desk, thinking. The foot fracture. Katie needs surgery, right? The break won't heal properly without surgical intervention. Helen won't take her, I said. She'll just let it heal wrong. Actually, she might have to, Amanda said. If a doctor orders surgery and Helen refuses, that could constitute medical neglect. Let me make some calls. Over the next 2 days, Amanda worked her connections. She found an orthopedic surgeon named Dr. Richard Hayes who had treated several of Katie's gymnastics teammates. He was a mandatory reporter and, according to Amanda, he was already concerned about Katie based on what he'd heard from other coaches and parents. Amanda contacted Dr. Hayes and briefed him on the situation. He agreed to help. Helen had scheduled a consultation appointment with Dr. Hayes for Katie's foot. The appointment was in 5 days. Dr. Hayes agreed that during the appointment, he would thoroughly examine Katie, document any signs of abuse or neglect, and call authorities if needed. He'd stall Helen in the office as long as possible. We arranged for Detective Morton from Seattle to coordinate with Denver police. Tracy, Amanda, and I would be nearby, ready to intervene once Dr. Hayes gave the signal. It was a long shot. So many things could go wrong. But it was the best chance we had. The day of the appointment arrived. I flew to Denver. Tracy drove from Seattle. Amanda was already there, having flown in 2 days earlier to coordinate with local authorities. We met at a coffee shop 3 blocks from Dr. Hayes' office. The appointment was scheduled for 2 o'clock. We arrived at 1:30 and positioned ourselves in the parking lot, trying to look casual. Detective Sarah Morton was there too, along with 2 Denver police officers in an unmarked car. Dr. Hayes will text me once they arrive, Amanda said, checking her phone repeatedly. He'll examine Katie, and if he finds evidence of abuse, he'll alert us and stall them. 2 o'clock came and went. No text from Dr. Hayes. 2:15. Nothing. 2:30. Amanda called Dr. Hayes' office. His receptionist answered. I'm calling about the Martinez appointment, Amanda said. Have they arrived yet? There was a pause. No, they never showed up. We've been calling, but there's no answer. Amanda hung up, her face pale. They're not there. They never came. We all looked at each other. Something was very wrong. Maybe they rescheduled? Tracy suggested. Detective Morton was already on her phone, calling the Denver Police Department. I need a welfare check at this address, she said, rattling off Helen's home address. We piled into cars and drove to Helen's house. The police arrived first. They knocked on the door. No answer. They looked in the windows. The house was dark, empty. One of the neighbors came out. An elderly woman who lived next door. Are you looking for Helen and Katie? She asked. I saw them loading up the car 2 days ago. Looked like they were going on a trip. Haven't seen them since. Did they say where they were going? Detective Morton asked. No, but Helen mentioned something about a training facility in the mountains. Said something about Katie needing intense preparation for something. Tracy and I looked at each other. Summit Peak, Tracy said. That's the facility Helen mentioned once. The one for elite gymnasts. Where is it? Detective Morton asked. About 2 hours outside Denver, Tracy said. Middle of nowhere. Private facility run by a former Olympic coach. Some kind of elite training retreat. Amanda was already searching for the address on her phone. Here, Summit Peak Gymnastics Retreat. Remote location up in the mountains. Detective Morton called for backup, and we caravanned toward the mountains. It took nearly 2.5 hours because the roads were winding and remote. The facility was at the end of a long gravel road, surrounded by pine forest. The building was large but old, a converted warehouse or factory. There were 3 cars in the parking lot. One was Helen's SUV. Officers are 30 minutes behind us, Detective Morton said, checking her radio. We should wait. Then we heard it. A scream from inside the building. High-pitched, agonized. Katie's scream. I didn't think. I ran toward the building. Tracy was right behind me. Amanda called for us to wait, but we didn't listen. The front door was unlocked. We burst into a large gymnasium space. The ceiling was high, the walls lined with equipment. In the center of the floor, under harsh fluorescent lights, Helen stood below a balance beam. Katie was on the beam. She was trying to do a routine, but she could barely stand. Her left foot was in a makeshift splint, wrapped in duct tape and cloth. She was crying, her face streaked with tears and sweat. Again, Helen screamed up at her. You're not done until you do it perfectly. I can't, Katie sobbed. Mom, please, I can't. Gordon, Tracy's voice snapped my attention. She was pointing at Katie's foot. Even from here, I could see it was swollen grotesquely, the splint barely containing it. Katie, I shouted. Helen spun around. When she saw me, fury contorted her face. How did you find us? You're not supposed to be here. Katie saw me. Our eyes met across the gym. Something in her face changed. The fear was still there, but underneath it, I saw recognition, relief, hope. Gordon, she whispered. Get down from there, Katie, I said, walking toward her. Right now. Don't you dare, Helen snarled at Katie. You stay right there and finish your routine. Katie looked between us, paralyzed with indecision. Katie, you don't have to do this anymore, I said. It's over. Come down. Helen climbed up onto the beam. She grabbed Katie's arm roughly. Get up. You're not finished. Let her go, Tracy shouted, running forward. Helen yanked Katie to standing. Katie cried out in pain as her broken foot took her weight. Then we all heard it. A sharp crack, like a branch, snapping. Katie screamed. Her leg buckled. She fell from the beam. Helen tried to catch her, but Katie was dead weight, falling. They both crashed to the mat below. I ran to them. Katie was on her back, unconscious. Her foot was twisted, at an unnatural angle. I could see bone protruding through the skin. A compound fracture. Blood was pooling beneath her leg. Look what you made me do! Helen screamed at me. She was trying to lift Katie. This is your fault. All of this is your fault. Don't touch her. I pushed Helen away. Tracy, call an ambulance. Tracy was already on her phone. Helen tried to grab Katie again. She's my daughter. You can't take her from me. I'm calling the police, Amanda said from the doorway. They're already on their way. Helen Martinez, You need to step away from your daughter right now. I'm her mother. I'm doing what's best for her. She needs to train. She needs to be perfect. Helen was crying now, mascara running down her face. Don't you understand? She has to succeed. She has to make it. She has to achieve what I couldn't. She has to. Detective Morton arrived, stepping into the gym. 2 Denver police officers were behind her. Helen Martinez. Step away from the child. Detective Morton ordered. Helen looked around wildly, realizing she was surrounded. She tried to move toward the back exit. I stepped in front of her. You're not going anywhere. Helen stared at me with wild eyes. Then she tried to shove past me. I grabbed her arms, holding her in place. She fought against me, screaming incoherently. The police reached us. They pulled Helen away from me and handcuffed her. You're under arrest for child abuse and child endangerment, Detective Morton said. She's my daughter, Helen shrieked. You can't do this. She needs me. She'll never succeed without me. Tracy was kneeling next to Katie, holding her hand. Gordon, she's waking up. I knelt beside my sister. Her eyes fluttered open. She looked confused, disoriented. Then she focused on me. You came back, she whispered. You never gave up on me. Never, I said, tears streaming down my face. I'll never give up on you, Katie. Never. Paramedics rushed in. They stabilized Katie's leg and loaded her onto a stretcher. I rode in the ambulance with her, holding her hand the entire way. Behind us, police were loading Helen into a squad car. She was still screaming, still insisting she'd done nothing wrong. But it was over. Finally, it was over. Katie was free. Katie spent a week in the hospital. Her foot required emergency surgery. The compound fracture had damaged tendons and ligaments. The surgeon, Dr. Hayes, told us she'd need months of recovery and physical therapy. He also told us that if we'd waited even a few more days, the damage might have been permanent. She might never have walked normally again. The surgery revealed old fractures that had healed incorrectly, stress fractures in both shins that had been ignored, damage to her ankles and knees from years of overtraining. At 15 years old, Katie's body had the wear and tear of an athlete in her 30s. But she was alive, and she was safe. I stayed by her bedside the entire week. So did Tracy. Our father Marcus flew in from Arizona and barely left her room. The 3 of us took turns keeping watch, as if we were afraid Helen might somehow break out of jail and come back for her. But Helen wasn't going anywhere. The district attorney charged her with multiple counts of child abuse, child endangerment, and assault. Tracy's surveillance footage became evidence. Dale's investigation into the life insurance policies showed financial motive. The videos Katie had sent me were finally admitted as evidence, since Katie confirmed they were real and that she'd sent them voluntarily. Helen's former coaches testified. Doctors testified about the pattern of injuries and emergency room visits. Dr. Hayes testified about Katie's condition when she arrived at his hospital. Katie herself testified via video link, too traumatized to face her mother in person. She told the truth finally, all of it. Years of abuse, starvation, sleep deprivation, physical punishment, verbal abuse that had convinced her she was worthless, that her only value came from gymnastics, that love meant sacrifice and pain. The psychological evaluation revealed what we'd all suspected. Helen was repeating the cycle of abuse her own parents had inflicted on her. She'd never processed the trauma of her destroyed Olympic dreams. Katie had become the vessel for Helen's unfulfilled ambitions, a second chance to achieve the glory that had been stolen from her. The jury deliberated for only 3 hours, guilty on all counts. At sentencing, the judge looked at Helen with barely contained disgust. You systematically tortured your own child in pursuit of your failed dreams, he said. You starved her, injured her, and destroyed her childhood. You showed no remorse, no recognition of wrongdoing. You deserve no mercy. He sentenced her to 12 years in prison. Katie cried when she heard the verdict. Not from sadness, but from relief. It was finally, truly over. The custody situation was complicated. Marcus and I both petitioned for guardianship. The court appointed us co-guardians until Katie turned 18. Katie chose to live primarily with me in Seattle, with regular visits to see our father in Arizona. The first few months were difficult. Katie had years of trauma to work through. She started seeing a therapist twice a week. She had nightmares. She struggled with eating, with trusting people, with believing she had value beyond her athletic performance. But slowly, gradually, she began to heal. I enrolled her in a regular high school in Seattle. She was terrified at first, having been isolated for so long. But she made friends, real friends. A girl named Emma, who invited her to sleepovers. A boy named Jake, who asked her to the spring dance. Normal teenage experiences that Katie had been denied her entire life. She joined the school's gymnastics team, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. She did it for fun, for the joy of movement, without the pressure of perfection. Her coach was gentle and encouraging. Katie learned that gymnastics could be something other than torture. Her foot healed, but there was permanent damage. She'd never be an elite-level gymnast. The years of abuse had taken that possibility away from her. Katie didn't miss it. "That was never my dream," she told me one night, a year after everything happened. We were sitting on the couch in my apartment, watching a movie. Normal sibling stuff. It was hers. "I don't even know what my dreams are yet, but I'm going to figure it out." She did figure it out. Katie became passionate about psychology. She wanted to study trauma, to understand what had happened to her and to help other people who'd been through similar experiences. She started volunteering at a local organization that helped children escape abusive situations. 2 years after her rescue, Katie graduated from high school. She gave a speech at graduation about surviving abuse and finding yourself after trauma. "My brother saved my life," she said, standing at the podium in her cap and gown. I sat in the audience, tears already streaming down my face. "He saved it by refusing to give up on me, even when everyone told him to, even when I told him to, even when it cost him everything. He taught me that real strength isn't about never falling down. It's about standing back up, over and over, no matter how many times you're knocked down. And it's about helping others stand up too." She looked directly at me. "Gordon, you never gave up. When I couldn't fight for myself, you fought for me. You showed me what real love looks like. Not the twisted version I grew up with, where love meant pain and sacrifice and never being good enough, but real love, the kind that protects, the kind that persists, the kind that says, 'I will not abandon you, no matter what.'" The audience applauded. I couldn't stop crying. After the ceremony, Katie found me in the crowd. She hugged me tight. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything. For never giving up. For saving me." "You saved yourself," I told her. "You were brave enough to send me those videos. Brave enough to finally tell the truth. I just helped you get to safety." "We saved each other," she said. And maybe that was true. I learned something through all of this. I learned that sometimes protecting someone you love means fighting the entire world. It means risking everything. It means standing up when everyone tells you to sit down, speaking up when everyone tells you to be quiet, and refusing to quit when everyone says you've already lost. Katie didn't need me to be perfect. She needed me to be persistent. To never stop fighting for her, even when she couldn't fight for herself. That's what family really means. Not blood, not obligation, but showing up, over and over, until the person you love is finally safe. Some people asked me later if it was worth it. Worth the arrest, the legal troubles, the restraining order, almost going to jail, worth losing my job and my reputation. I always gave them the same answer. Look at Katie now. She's thriving. She's in college studying psychology. She has friends, dreams, a future. She smiles. She laughs. She's free. Was it worth it? Every single second. Because that's what love does. It fights. It persists. It never gives up. And in the end, love wins. Now, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had to fight for someone you love against impossible odds? Have you ever faced a situation where the system failed, where everyone told you to give up, but you knew in your heart you had to keep going? How did you find the strength to persist? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else who's facing a similar battle right now. And if you know someone who's being abused, whether they're a child or an adult, please don't look away. Please don't assume someone else will help. Be the person who stands up. Be the person who fights. Be the person who refuses to quit. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel for more stories about resilience, survival, and the power of never giving up. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes people need to know they're not alone in their fight. Thank you for listening to Katie's story. Thank you for caring about what happens to vulnerable people in our world. And remember, you might be the only person willing to fight for someone who can't fight for themselves. Don't let that opportunity pass you by. Until next time, take care of each other out there.